Welcome back to Wild Beauty, our native landscaping course. In this section, we're diving into one of the most critical parts of landscape design, site analysis and evaluation. If you're like me and you tend to lean more towards the creative side of things, this section will likely be one of the less interesting sections of this course compared to the design elements. But trust me, this is so important. Before we plant a single plant or seed, we need to understand the land itself, its natural strengths and challenges, so that we can create a thriving, sustainable space using native plants. This is section 2 of our 7-section Native Landscape Design course for beginners. In today's section, we will start to dive deeper into laying the foundation for a successful and low maintenance native landscape plan. Specifically, we'll learn how to conduct an at home site evaluation, how to analyze sun and shade patterns in your planting area, and how to test water drainage and soil conditions. At the end of this section, we'll put our new knowledge to the test with a sample landscape layout where we will map out the features discovered during our at home site analysis and evaluation. Let's dive in. Site analysis is one of the most crucial steps in native landscape design, setting the foundation for a successful and sustainable garden. It involves thoroughly assessing the existing conditions of your landscape to better understand its unique attributes and limitations. In this section, we'll learn how to evaluate key aspects of your site to ensure that your native plant choices can thrive and complement the environment. Let's dive in a little deeper and talk about why site analysis is so important. First and foremost, informed plant choices. Proper site analysis helps you choose native plants that are well suited to your landscape's conditions. This reduces the need for intensive maintenance, such as irrigation or fertilization, and ensures that your plants will thrive naturally. Sustainability. By working with the natural conditions of your site, you promote a more sustainable landscape. Native plants are better adapted to local conditions and they require fewer resources like water and pesticides, reducing the overall environmental impact of your design. Maximizing aesthetics and functionality. Site analysis allows you to strategically place plants in areas where they will thrive and look their best. You can design functional spaces such as outdoor living areas or wildlife habitats while creating visually appealing garden layouts. Lastly, preventing long-term problems. Without a proper site analysis, you may encounter issues like plant failure, erosion, or waterlogging. By understanding your site's specific characteristics, you can proactively address potential problems such as poor drainage or improper plant placement. Next, we are going to dive into the key elements of your site analysis process. First on our list is identifying areas of sunlight and shade. Sunlight is one of the most important factors to consider when conducting a site analysis. Sunlight patterns in your garden will impact your plant selection and your overall landscape design. Sunlight is key when it comes to selecting native plants. Some need full sun, while others prefer full shade or partial shade. But I can promise you that there's a native plant option for any amount of sunlight in your yard. Mapping out how much sunlight different areas of your garden get throughout the day is crucial. Observe your yard at different times to understand which areas get full sun, partial sun, or are shaded most of the time. I recommend documenting where the sunlight hits in the morning around 9 a.m., shortly after noon around 1 p.m., and again later in the afternoon around 4 p.m. or so. It's also necessary to check these at different points throughout the season if you can, meaning earlier on in the spring, sometime around midsummer, and later on in the fall. This will give you a true idea of what the sunlight patterns are in your yard. Clients always love to get plant lists. They're always looking for recommendations on full sun or full shade plants. So I did toss together just some suggestions on popular Midwest native plants that are shade loving or sun loving. A truly full shade or truly full sun plant is actually more rare than you would think. Most native plants that we work with fall somewhere in between that range. A few truly full shade plants include ferns, blue stem goldenrod, trilliums, spikenard, spiderwort, and foamflower. While there are many varieties of native plants that can technically survive in full shade, these plants will fully bloom and thrive in full shade conditions. Conversely, there are a handful of native plants that can tolerate truly full sun conditions. Coreopsis, coneflower, sneezeweed, black-eyed Susans, butterfly weed, New England aster, and many varieties of native grasses can tolerate and thrive in full direct sun conditions. More often than not, these varieties are also drought tolerant, so you can add that as a perk to your list. So, why is sunlight analysis so important? First and foremost, plant health. Native plants are adapted to specific light conditions, and placing them in the wrong spot can cause growth problems and prevent them from reaching their full potential in size or blooms. Full sun plants like milkweed or coreopsis need at least 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight daily, while shade loving plants like ferns or wild ginger will scorch if they're exposed to too much sun. Planning for extra sunlight or intentionally creating more shade can also affect your home and property's energy efficiency. Understanding sunlight patterns can help you design your landscape in a way that moderates your home's temperature and makes being outside on sunny days more comfortable. Planting shade trees in the right location can reduce cooling costs in the summer. Lastly, planning for seasonal changes is important when considering the season long health of your plants. Light patterns shift with the seasons. So, what's sunny in the summer may be shaded in the winter, especially if large deciduous trees are nearby. If you plant shade plants in an area that actually ends up receiving a decent amount of sun later in the summer, there's a good chance they'll be scorched. Observing your planting site over different times of the year enables you to plan ahead for shifts like this so that you can choose plants that suit the sunlight conditions throughout the growing season. Take note of shaded areas created by trees, walls, or even your home. These shadows shift throughout the day, so it's important to pay attention to this over time. Note areas of sun and shade at least 3 times throughout the day: once in the morning, once at noon, and once later on in the afternoon. A hand drawn sketch can help you visualize how you might map out your own garden space. This illustration includes sun and shade zones, marked with arrows to show how the sun travels through the sky throughout the day. This encourages learners to make their own maps, a key step before you start planting. Moving on to our next element of site analysis. For our second element of site analysis, we're going to focus on water drainage and soil conditions. Water management in a landscape can make or break the success of your garden. Understanding how water moves through your yard will help you select native plants that can either tolerate or thrive in different moisture conditions. Walk around your garden after a rainstorm or right after your irrigation runs and identify spots where water pools or drains too fast. You can also identify areas of erosion or fast moving soil as well. Some areas might require adjusting your plant choices or creating rain gardens or rock gardens to manage water more efficiently. When you do find a problem area like this, you can use flags or markers to label these areas or take a quick video on your phone so you can reference this later on when you're actually planning the plant layout. Different plants have evolved to thrive in different moisture levels. Joe Pye weed, for example, can tolerate moist soils and is perfect for those wetter spots. Meanwhile, plants like black-eyed Susans or butterfly milkweed prefer well-draining, drier soils and are notoriously drought tolerant and can handle long periods without water. Here are some popular native plant choices for both types of problem areas. Knowing your soil type is crucial to understanding how water will move through it. Clay-heavy soils retain water longer, while sandy soils drain quickly, each requiring specific plant selections to meet their needs. Are you unsure about what type of soil you have in your yard? Here's a really simple at-home soil test that you can try on your own. First step, gather your soil sample. Start by collecting a soil sample from your garden. Dig down about 6 inches to get a representative sample of the soil. Remove any large debris like roots, rocks, or mulch, then fill a clear jar about halfway with soil. Step 2, add water and shake. Fill the jar with water, leaving about an inch of space at the top. Screw the lid on tightly and shake the jar vigorously for a minute or two to thoroughly mix the soil with the water. This process breaks up soil clumps and allows the particles to suspend in the water. Step 3, let it settle for about 24 hours. Place the jar in a spot where it can sit undisturbed for 24 hours. During this time, the soil particles will begin to settle based on their weight and size. After the water has cleared, you'll notice three distinct layers forming in the jar. Sand has the heaviest and largest particles, which will settle at the bottom within a few minutes. Silt has medium sized particles that form that middle layer, settling after a few hours. Clay has the smallest, lightest particles, and those will stay suspended longer but will eventually settle near the top layer. Our last step is to interpret your results. Measure the thickness of each layer to determine the proportion of sand, silt, and clay in your soil. Loamy soil tends to be our ideal soil type. If all three layers are roughly equal in size, then you have loamy soil, which is well balanced for drainage and nutrient retention. Clay soil is much slower draining. If the top layer is thick and dominates the jar, you have clay soil. This type of soil holds water for longer periods, which can lead to poor drainage and root rot. But trust me, there's still plants for that. Lastly, we have sandy soil, which is typically very fast draining. If the bottom layer of sand is much thicker than the others, then you have sandy soil. Sandy soils drain quickly, but can struggle to retain moisture and nutrients. And again, there's a lot of native plants that do very well in sandy soil. Keep in mind that discovering you may have more clay or more sand in your soil does not necessarily mean you need to amend it before you can plant anything. Native plants have evolved over time to adapt to the soil conditions we already have here. So there are native plants that thrive in clay-heavy or sand-heavy soil. Knowing your soil type simply helps you choose more appropriate plants for your yard so you can grow a thriving garden. Once you've gathered your information, it's time to put it all on paper. Start with a basic sketch of your garden space. Your landscape sketch does not need to be complex or elaborate. You just need to make sure you're including key details from the analysis that we talked about today. We're going to work on a practice sketch for a hypothetical landscape design. We will go more in depth on this process in a later section of this online course, but for today, I just want to cover the basics of sketching out your landscape design to incorporate your site analysis and evaluation. Begin with a simple sketch of your garden space using graph paper. This allows you to scale your property and plot out essential features accurately. Use a common scale like 1 square equals 1 foot to keep things proportional. For this example, we will use that rule that 1 square equals 1 foot. First, we will mark the important immovable elements in your garden. Things like your house, pathways, fences, or any large trees. These features will shape how and where you can place your plants. In this example, I added the front edge of my house near the top, a stepping stone pathway to get to the front door, and large shrubs that I don't intend to remove for this landscape project. I also added the location of my hose spigot, noted with a blue raindrop, as the water source because that is very important when it comes to choosing which plants I want to plant. It's also essential to note water movement. Highlight areas that have good drainage, spots where water pools, or where runoff occurs after a heavy rain. In this hypothetical example, I included a dry spot to the left of the walkway since it has no irrigation access, as well as a low elevation area that tends to collect water runoff. This is important for selecting moisture-tolerant plants such as Joe Pye weed in wet areas, or drought-tolerant species like little bluestem in drier areas. Next, we'll identify where sunlight hits your garden throughout the day. Use a different color to mark areas that receive full sun, partial sun, and full shade. In this example, the movement of the sun travels from the far right side of the house to the left side, which leaves a few areas of shade in the morning because they're cast in shadow. The house blocks out morning sun in the upper left corner, while the established shrub blocks out morning shade in front of the house. Since these areas still get afternoon sun, full shade plants will not be suitable for these regions. The lack of morning sun and lack of afternoon shade will automatically limit my selection to partial sun, partial shade plants. The rest of the yard is considered full sun with more than 8 hours of direct sun per day. Plants like echinacea or butterfly milkweed thrive in full sun, while native shade plants like wild ginger prefer more sheltered spots. Knowing where these conditions occur will guide your plant placement. Make sure to include pathways and access points for ease of movement around your garden. You'll want to create flow in your design so you can enjoy every part of your space. In this example, I will likely end up adding an additional new pathway to the right of the stepping stone pathway that leads to the front door. This section of landscape will be approximately 11 by 14 feet, 154 square feet, so it will benefit from being sectioned out with a nice walkway in the middle. These access point paths do not necessarily need to match the existing walkways in your landscape. Often these are more rudimentary, a grass or a gravel pathway that enables you to meander easily through your newly planted flower bed. With this basic sketch, you have the foundation for your landscape design. As we move into plant selection, keep referring back to your map. Each plant should go in the right spot for its sunlight and water needs, making sure they'll thrive in your garden's unique conditions. We will move on to design principles and plant selection in the next sections of this online course. But for reference, I have added the types of plants we will be looking for in this example. By performing a thorough site analysis, you're setting yourself up for success into the future. Every landscape has unique environmental factors that will influence your design, from sunlight patterns to soil types. Taking the time to analyze your site ensures that you are choosing the right native plants for your space, leading to a healthier, more sustainable garden that becomes low maintenance over time. In the next section, we'll take your site analysis one step further. You'll begin translating all the information you've gathered into an actionable design plan. We'll focus on arranging and organizing elements within your landscape design to create a cohesive and functional space. In section 3 of Wild Beauty, you'll learn how to map out planting zones, design with layers of plants to enhance biodiversity, and strategically position key features to bring balance to your garden. From pathways to plant groupings, you'll begin shaping your vision into a beautiful and sustainable native plant landscape. Don't forget to download your printable PDF reference guide and plant list for section 2 of this course. These downloadable documents make it easy to refer back to the concepts that we've learned during the videos when you're ready to design your own backyard garden. Check back for section 3 and reach out if you have any questions. We'll see you there.